The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to this valuable Power Retail webinar session brought to you today by Oracle and Bronto. So my name's Grant Arnott. I'm the publisher of Power Retail, and I'll be introducing our guest speaker very shortly. Before that introduction, some quick housekeeping. Firstly, the toilets. I hope you know where they are because this is a webinar and I'm not going to be able to help you. At the end of the presentation, we'll have time for questions. You can enter these at any time in the question dialog box on your dashboard, and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can at the end of the session. So we've got a big time ahead this morning, so please get comfortable. The title today is Consumer Retailer Confessions, What Consumers Really Want and Expect. So what consumers expect is changing, and don't we know it? But do you really know what consumers want, and do you have all the plans in place to meet their needs? Shortly, we're going to hear from Oracle and Bronto Senior Commerce Marketing Analyst Greg Zakowicz as he dives into the recently released results from a survey of both retailers and consumers. He'll explore the divide that exists between consumer expectations and the strategies of retailers in Australia and offer strategic email recommendations for giving consumers what they want. Greg's going to discuss how consumers expect retailers to use the data they collect, whether retailer strategies align with those expectations, generational differences and similarities among consumers, and email strategies that give consumers what they want. Greg is also the host of the Commerce Marketer podcast, so look that up before the day is done. And he joins us now. Please welcome Greg Zakowicz. Over to you, Greg.
Thanks, Grant. Appreciate the intro, and good morning, everyone who's tuned in today. So before we get to the fun stuff, I'm going to get to some less fun stuff, and I'm just going to ask you not to trade any Oracle stock based on anything I might say today. We all stayed out of jail. We all have a good time. So the agenda for today, we're going to look at a couple different things here, but as Grant mentioned, we're going to look at some recently released results. Maybe I can speak one of these days here about 2 Bronto commission studies we did globally last year. So we did one of e-commerce executives around the world. We also did one of consumers around the world, looking at consumer expectations, how they shop, their behaviors, those things. And then from the retail side, what they're looking to do to meet those expectations. So the results we look at today are going to be Australia-specific results, so we don't have to worry about jumbling those with US, UK, and Canada results as well. And then as we go through those, we're going to look at generational differences and some similarities between those and wrap up with some email strategies to help give consumers what they want. Also recognize that you may have a lean email team. So these are all easily achievable, attainable, and effective marketing strategies as well. So as we get into it, I want you to imagine yourself at a hotel, right? And you're looking for dinner reservations. So you naturally walk down to the concierge desk. And you tell the concierge that you're looking for a nice surf and turf. You are, you like drinking a vintage Cabernet. Your wife likes a vintage Chardonnay or a sparkling rosé. You want something a little more dim lit, maybe a little more romantic, a little on the quiet side, right? And the recommendation comes back is the Hard Rock Cafe. Now, while the Hard Rock might be good for most people, it's not relevant to the data that you provide the concierge. So your expectations are certainly not met here. You certainly would have expected more, especially since that is their job, right? To provide recommendations to you to help you with a problem you have. You might expect more from the concierge. You might even have a less good impression of the hotel brand that employed the concierge. Yet this experience happens every day between consumers and retailers, right? Consumers are giving up data all day long, whether it's social, whether it's search behavior, whether it's online behavior on your commerce site. And retailers, social media, this is really what we're going to talk about. What are those expectations? What do consumers actually expect retailers to track their data behavior? And what we see is mostly yes, right? Millennials, less so than baby boomers, somewhat surprisingly. But you might also say that, hey, baby boomers are a little more skeptical about how this works. But even if they're not expecting them fully, they don't necessarily not expect them to. There's a lot of, well, maybe so, maybe not in there. But for the most part, consumers are expecting retailers to track their shopping habits. if they expect them to track them, they also expect them to use them, right? Sure, I'll give you something, but I want something in return. So what they expect in return for the most part are promotions and discounts, free samples. People love free stuff. And then product recommendations. And if you think about the product recommendation side, right, this is something that you see on when you're browsing a website. It could be on the web, it could be an email, it could be across even in person on there. But these are the things that they expect the most. And I arrowed the very bottom one because it's going to rear its head during this presentation a couple times. Consumers certainly expect connecting the online to the in-store experience to be more effective for them, to be a more recent and occurring strategy moving forward. So again, this is what consumers are looking for. This is what they're expecting from the retailers. Now, they would also willingly give up data, right? Sure, take my data as long as you give me some promotion or incentive in there. Because again, people love free stuff. Retailers like to discount things. So not only do they expect it just off the cusp, they also would provide that simply by giving it, right? Sure, take my data, but they want something in return. That's the most important point here. They would also willingly give that up just for product recommendations. Sure, make my shopping trip easier, but take my data. Now, this is a little less convincing than the promotions, but of course, promotions save money. This enhances the overall user experience. So of course, people are willing to give up the data, and that's really the most important point to take here. But when we talk about product recommendations, which people expect, people would give up data to get it. How good are they? How are retailers executing upon that? And the fact is, there's a lot of room for improvement here, right? We're consistently not satisfied by product recommendations. It's more of that, maybe type attitude. So when we look at some of these results in the presentation today, and we talk about some of the email strategies, we have to recognize that people want incentives. And what do we do to counteract those? Because you don't want to incentivize all the time. People want recommendations. Well, how do we do recommendations the right way? How do we set those proper expectations? And of course, if you want to give them free samples, give them free samples. Now, this is great for the online experience, right? Some of this will apply to the in-store as well, but in-store also has its own set of shopping behaviors and patterns with it. So if you walk into a brick and mortar store and you start shopping, let's say for a pair of shoes, you walk in there, you're browsing, you're looking, and all of a sudden you reach into your pocket or you reach into your purse and you pull out your phone. Think about what you're doing with your phone. Are you searching for something? Are you Googling something? Are you texting someone? All right, and here's a litany of things you can do, and I don't expect you to read each of these when you're in store shopping. But here's what people do. We have all these things that they can do, and all these generations, they're really doing the same thing. They're just doing it to different degrees. They're doing it in different orders, right? So they're seeking and digesting content. Can I find a better price? Can I find better product reviews or help me inform my purchasing decision? So phones have really become a vehicle to assist with the purchase process. It's not necessarily always the only purchase process. And, speaker often likes to use the term just-in-time content for just-in-time buyer, right? And this is really what it is. So looking for just-in-time content, product reviews for something I might buy, taking a picture of it, right? But it's a just-in-time buyer. They're in the store looking at something there. So if we know they're using the phone in the store, and we also have expectations of retailers tracking them, purchase behavior, all these other things, consumers also expect retailers to give them more technology to better personalize the in-store experience, right? So even baby boomers who are more skeptical, probably because they think, they're trying to figure out how technology is fitting into life on a day-to-day basis, right? Shopping, do I need it? Do I not need it? But people want retailers to do more. Now, if we ask retailers, which we did, what's going to move the needle in store? What's going to have the greatest impact on your sales? Right? And this is how the top three shook out. So in-store Wi-Fi for online shopping, right? Interactive spaces like dressing rooms, kiosks, things like that, and then personalized in-store offers. Now, people want to personalize in-store offers. That's great. People are using their phones in the store. That's great. These things seem to align a little bit. But let's dig into this just a little bit here. So number one, in-store Wi-Fi for online shopping and price comparison. Consumers don't really care that much. And here's why. Think about when you go somewhere. You walk in there, you sit down, restaurant, wherever it might be, right? And use your phone. And if they don't have free Wi-Fi, what's the common response? Oh man, they don't have free Wi-Fi here, right? It's expected in most places, maybe not airplanes, maybe not airports, things like that, but in most places, Wi-Fi is expected, right? And even if you don't have it, no one gets up and leaves, right? They just simply use the data on their phone. They're not paying by the second on their phone in most cases, and they're not streaming Netflix movies. So you have this ability to, hey, yeah, retailers think we can supply Wi-Fi for someone, but for the consumer side, it doesn't matter. They're just going to do what they do on their phone anyways, because that's what they do. Now, there might be longer term implications, right? The store might implement Wi-Fi so it can tie better to an app and we can track someone. And of course, that is a consideration here, but that's not a next 3-month type thing, right? That's certainly more down the road. So when we talk about Wi-Fi, retailers think this is going to move the needle most in store. Consumers, it may, but they don't really care that much. So there's a little bit of a gap missing here. Now, when we talk about dressing rooms, of course, if you're going to buy a pair of jeans or some clothes, you probably want to try those on. So it certainly makes sense that people want dressing rooms. It is important for them, but again, let's think about it from an online standpoint. You know, clothes are obviously a very high return item, but they're also a highly purchased item. You don't have to try them on necessarily. Now, interactive spaces like dressing rooms, right? I expect these things to become more popular over the next couple of years. Do I think every store in the world is going to have a smart mirror in the dressing room? No, I don't. You know, it's just we're not quite there yet. Maybe in 10 years we will be, but right now we're not there yet. So of course, dressing rooms are important. The interactivity of them, that remains to be seen. I don't think most consumers, maybe except for high-end retailers, you know, consumers really care about that too much. And then the third thing, promotions and discounts, right? Personalized offers. Of course, we saw that people expect promotions and discounts. They love promotions and discounts. And of course, there's no surprise here that people think this is important for in-store. Now, this obviously ties to better connecting the in-store and online experience, right? If you know who I am, you can personalize that promotion. So there's some alignment here for what they want. But from a retailer side, we don't want to discount everyone, right? We want to start talking about a brand value and provide a better user experience without having to resort to discounting. Now, I included this one up here because this one to me is important, right? Equipping sales associates with tablets for real-time product info. Now think about this, right? It's important to consumers that when they want help from a sales associate, they get help. Now, it's more important for millennials. Now, millennials are that cohort that we see they can't socialize with someone. They are always on their phone and they hate people and they want to walk into a store where no one is there, right? But millennials like to interact. They like going to stores. Right? So whatever you hear, they certainly like shopping like that. So think about this. If you're an online retailer or you call a retailer and you talk to the customer service department, what are you talking to? You're talking to a customer service rep who has a computer in front of them. Right? They're able to assist you, look up information, provide you with return info, whatever it is. When you walk into a store, it makes no sense that store associates don't have that information in front of them, right? You have your phone there. You are more powerful than the store associate in a lot of cases. So this is important for consumers. They might not always want to talk to someone, but when they want to talk to someone, they really want to talk to someone. They want that help. So this is an area where the overall consumer experience matters more to consumers than say Wi-Fi does to them. And then finally, two things that really apply to both the in-store and online experience, and they're obvious ones, right? So you may say, why are you even showing me this? Well, no one goes to a store hoping to buy a pair of jeans or shoes and saying, oh man, I hope they don't have those in stock today. Same with the checkout. I hope there's a line really long because I don't want to go anywhere else, right? I want to wait 20 people deep in line. It doesn't happen. But it's important. These two things are important to people. I think about the online experience. If your checkout page, someone's buying something on a mobile phone, and that checkout page is 5 pages long or 4 pages long, and it's a pain, they're going to abandon that sale. So this overall consumer experience is important to them, and this goes for both online and in-store. So if we boil everything down to a consumer experience standpoint, it's important. Now think about this as well. Amazon's relatively new in Australia. They're just getting ramped up. But Amazon does this, right? Amazon has looked at it. and they said, hey, what do people like about going in store, right? I can buy products right there and then. I can take it home with me right there and then, right? I don't have to pay for shipping. And Amazon has taken those things and applied them to the online model. 2-hour delivery, sure, right? 2-day delivery, sure, you get it quicker. Cheap prices, sure, we'll do that for you as well. Other services, sure, we'll do that. And those things are coming in Australia. So, if you're not prepared for it already, certainly get prepared for it. Amazon is eating people's lunch here in the United States. So half of all e-commerce is through Amazon. But they have done the good job of taking things that people like about shopping online and doing it, and like about buying in store and putting it online as best possible. But it's all about the consumer experience. And then from a retailer standpoint, where are retailers finding priorities to target consumers, provide consumers with what they want? So if we look at the highest potential to improve sales or profits, this is what we see from our ranking list, right? So the top 2, mobile and website experience. Pretty good things, right? It's a consumer experience, or right? Look at the very bottom one, coordinated online and in-store experience, right? So we saw earlier in the presentation that consumers wanted a better connection between these two. Retailers say, hey, that's great. Doesn't really matter for us from a sales or profit standpoint, right? These other things matter, and they very well may. But I do want to look in these a little bit because they really paint the picture for how we target, especially the email communications. So let's look at website and mobile experience. So these are the number 1 and number 2. And if we talk to businesses and say, hey, how satisfied with you in your ability to execute upon these things, this is what we see in Australia, right? 82%, right around that mix. Pretty good numbers, right? So I'm somewhat surprised the mobile experience is better, only because online's been around longer than mobile experiences have, but they're right in ballpark. They're very high, all right? So, which is a good thing, right? If consumers or retailers assume they're giving a good experience, or customers are telling them it's a good experience, that's great. So this is certainly right on par. I would say retailers know they need to get better, and this is where consumer technology moves quicker than retail technology. So there's always a bit of a catch-up game here, but it is 2018, right? If you're not mobile optimized, you're just not optimized. So retailers are really on par and on the right line with what they want to do here, providing a good experience. Hopefully retailer or consumers expect the same thing and are getting the same thing. So everything good here. Now, if we look at these things, personalization, right? Personalization comes down, and you think about the concierge example from earlier. Personalization comes down to taking in data, collecting data, looking at that data, and then putting an output with a relevant result to it, right? Hey, I want surf and turf. I want this, I want this, I want this. Here's the restaurant I give you. From a retailer standpoint in Australia, we see a pretty big difference here. Yeah, for the most part, 3 out of 4 say, yeah, we can understand these preferences, but less than half say we can actually use these preferences. Not completely surprising. And here's why. If you think about your email marketing team in the house, right? Do you have 12 people on staff, or do you have 2 or 3? Maybe even 1, right? We are collecting data all the time, but we don't always have the manpower to execute upon the data. And that's a challenge. And that's not an Australia challenge. That's really a global challenge for retailers. So I look at it from an email marketing standpoint. I say, can I create 50 to 100 segments? Yeah, I could probably do it in an hour. It's easy. Can I use 50 to 100 segments on a daily basis? Probably not, right? And if I can't do it on scale. I can't do it more than once a week because I don't have the graphic designers. I don't have the time to copyright. I don't have the time to schedule all those messages. So the trick is to find out how we can use this data with limited resources in an effective way to provide a better experience for them. And this is the biggest challenge of anything. The beauty of it is technology is advancing rapidly, and we can do this. And I'm going to talk to you in a few minutes about how we can do this. This really brings us to the proverbial right message, right time, right channel. So this is where we sit, right? Yeah, 50% of the time, companies say, yeah, we can always send out the right message. The right time, right about the same thing, right? And time's a little tricky. It's going to vary based on a lot of things. And right channel, a little bit less, but we're all around 50%. there's never going to be 100% here, right? It's just not the way it's going to be. But the right message really points to me, hey, it's a batch and blast world, right? And this goes back to what we just talked about, limited resources internally. I can't come up with 50 messages a day, so I'm going to batch and blast everyone. Well, for some people, it's relevant. For other people, it's not relevant, right? Right time, well, that's going to vary. It's important to use tools that will give you, send time optimization, so it can look at the data and the historical data of individual subscribers and say, hey, Greg likes to open at 7 p.m., send him a message then. Susie likes to open at 9 p.m., send her a message then. So use the technology to help determine when you send messages. And channel doesn't surprise me, right? Because you have blending channels more and more now. Social media to email to SMS to live chat to websites. All right, these things start merging. Companies are really trying to figure out where they think the consumer is at any given time. And then finally, from a data standpoint, ability to compete with larger retailers. So Australia, they're pretty confident with their ability to compete with larger retailers. And the reason I put this up is really this is an Amazon talking point. And how does Australia compete with the emergence of Amazon, who's getting started? They feel fairly confident. Now, surprisingly here is the confidence is high, although the confidence in the ability to execute upon data and personalization is low, right? So there's something misfitting here. It's either, hey, we can't use the data, but no one else can either. But we think we're in a pretty good shape here. But if you compare this to the US and then everyone else except Australia, so UK, Canada, Netherlands, Australia is a little bit better. But here's where I look at the United States and they go 70%. Yeah, 70% of retailers can compete with larger retailers. And that's where I'm going to call BS on US retailers, right? There is no way. I already mentioned that Amazon counts for half of all e-commerce in the United States. Do you think half of the companies in the US are going, oh yeah, we're killing Amazon right now? Absolutely not. So I think there's this little battle between, it's Amazon and it's everyone else, so we can compete with everyone else, but we really can't compete with Amazon that well. There's a couple companies that can, but for the most part, they can't. So when you look at this and say, hey, we need to better utilize and personalize messages and data from people. So take it for what it's worth, but the ability is there. So this is going to bring me to, well, what do we do? All right, how can we effectively target consumers? How can we effectively use data available to us to apply to them? So I'm going to give you 4 strategies that you can execute. You don't have to have a lot of resources. You can implement them slowly and you can go as you go. But acquisition source for a welcome messaging strategy. Welcome message, subscriber signs up to your email program. They're brand new. They get a message that says, hey, welcome to our club, thanks for signing up. Here's what we have. So here's where everyone gets the same message. And I always say if a 18-year-old female and a 40-year-old male sign up for your message or your email program, are they getting the same message? And if they do, they're not relevant to both. That message is not relevant to both of those. It's maybe only one. So figure out where they're signing up on your website and send them a more unique message based on that. So here's an example from ASOS, male, female, very simplistic. They ask whether you're male or female when you sign up. Now think about your website and the products you sell. Where does it matter? So if you're a retailer that sells maternity gear, right, and you also sell men's clothing and things like that, well, don't you think the person who signed up while viewing maternity products has different needs than the person who signed up, with looking for men's shoes or flip-flops, right? So you can customize not only the welcome message, but the entire series from that point as well. So it's data that they're giving you based on nothing else, and you're listening and you're collecting it, but you can use it to automate a more relevant message to them. Now, the other thing to look at is click behavior. All right, so if we're looking at click behavior, say, hey, they clicked on the maternity link in the message. So why should the second message not be maternity focused? All right, they're telling you something. They've signed up. They've gone to your site. They've signed up. They got a message. They opened the message. They clicked on the message. They're telling you tons of stuff, and you should can certainly utilize that to your advantage. So here's an example of what that could look like. Here's the message to the left there. The second message in the welcome series, hey, reasons you love shopping with us. Well, these guys sell saltwater fishing products, freshwater fishing products, boating gear, whatever it might be. So they said, hey, if you clicked on these saltwater links, one of these two saltwater links, we're not going to send you a message to. We're going to send you this one. It's a saltwater specific, more sales oriented welcome message, right? Because you've showed some interaction with them. And what that shows is relevance matters. Open rates are better, click rates are better, conversion rates are better, revenue per email is better, and you generate more revenue with fewer emails. So it's just one example of power you can do. And again, you're not hiring 6 people to do this. You're doing a simple piece of automation with a simple segment, and one person in your email team can do this, and it's automated. It goes out, takes the resources off, but it can certainly provide value. Browser recovery message is another, right? User goes to your website, they don't cart a product, but they bounce around some things, and then they leave. Well, you can target and automate messages to these consumers who do that, right? And think about, you can be specific and say, hey, Greg, we noticed you checking out some shoes, but you didn't actually buy anything. Come back and buy something. Or you can make it look like a batch and blast promotional message. All right, so the example to the right there, I'm checking out some mulch, right? And I leave, and I get this mulch email. Hey, we got everything you need here. They also include some product recommendations in there for types of mulch. Now, all I know is that I'm looking for mulch, and that Lowe's sent me a mulch email. It doesn't say, hey, we saw you browsing. Highly relevant messages, right? Consumer shopping for something, they get something that's timely relevant to them, and they can convert. Here's the thing, you're going to send them another message anyways. Chances are it's a batch and blast or slightly segmented message, but you're gonna send them another message. Why not make it more relevant? Third tactic, abandon the cart strategy. Probably the most profitable message anyone listening is sending out of their email program. So you might say, well, it's the most profitable message. What do I need to do here? Right, think about all the data they're giving you, right? Who's putting items in the cart? Have they never purchased? Have they purchased one time? Have they purchased 10 times this month? Well, if they purchased 10 times this month, I don't need to say, hey, you should come back to shop with us because we're great. They know you're great. They've offered me 10 times, right? It can change your entire strategy for how you target people. Same with the cart products, right? If everything's on sale and it goes off sale in 2 days, I don't need to say, oops, you left something in your cart. I need to say, hey, get it before it's gone, right? This sale is expiring. You can use sense of urgency. You can do a lot of different things by looking at the cart products, right? And this can change when you send a message. It can change how often you send messages. It can change the verbiage in your messages. It can change whether you use incentives or not and what those incentives are. And it can also change how many messages you send. 1, 2, 3, dare I say 4, 5, right? You can send 4 or 5 messages, sure. Right? I have clients, or I had clients that used to do that and still do, and it's effective for them. Now, do you need to send 5 messages for a $15 pair of headphones? Yeah, probably not, right? But again, you're going to send them a message anyways. They've identified specific products. Get them things they need to know about. And a great example I'll give you is, I was shopping for a dishwasher a while back. I abandoned a dishwasher in a shopping cart, and I got a message. Oops, you left something in your cart. I'm like, no, it wasn't an oops. I left something in my cart. But what do I need to know about a dishwasher? I need to know about installation services, haul-away services, the tubes that I use. Can I use the same ones, or do I need to buy new ones? Right? But the messaging was generic. And had they looked at it and said, hey, this is a heavy-duty appliance, let's get them more information, you could have swayed me with some of the messaging and made it more relevant to me. And then the fourth one is product recommendations. We saw earlier that consumers expect product recommendations. It's a great tool. You put a snippet of code in your messages and you're done, right? It pulls out of your product catalog. The beauty here is you can use them in almost any message you send out, right? Promotional messages, you can make them their own messages, abandon the cart, transactionals, whatever you want to do. People expect personalization. They like them, but they know product recommendations need to be better. So here's a couple to-dos. Here's a couple be wary ofs. A couple examples here. So the one to the left, it's a batch and blast message with recommendations. So you take the recommendations out, that might be relevant to some people, might not be relevant to others. Personalization makes it work. Middle one, abandoned cart messaging. Yeah, and here's some other things you might like as well. And off to the right, the whole message is recommendations, but they're specific to me. They're intuitive to me. I bought both men's and female products, trying to convert my wife to a Buffalo Sabres hockey team to mild success, but it's relevant based on purchase and browse history, right? Highly effective messages that just go out. It's great. Automated messages, birthday messages, post-purchase messages, the like, right? So here's an example. Connor's birthday is around the corner, 3-year-old boy, he's coming up, he's turning 3, right? Extremely relevant message because my son, Connor, was turning 3 this past year. I got this. This engages me. This is a really nice message, right? How can you make this better? Well, doing this, putting recommendations in there. It's still relevant. It's still engaging. But now you made this message 10 times better. So here's just an example of how you can make automated messages, which are already relevant, even more powerful for the consumers. And you could do this across the board, transactional, so order confirmations, shipping confirmations, post-purchase messages like you see here, right? You've got purchase data to use with this as well. So as long as they're intuitive to the user, they can be extremely powerful. And again, think about just your batch and blast strategy if that's what you're doing. If it's batch and blast, you're sending it anyways. Why not put a secondary or a tertiary section in there that is relevant to the individual consumer? And then a couple pitfalls before we wrap up here, because recommendations, people do get in trouble with these sometimes. And it's okay if they're not intuitive to the user, but you have to do it right. So just for you subject lines, here's a couple examples, right? I made a purchase in Overstock, I get this message. Hey, Greg, we recommend this. Stylus pens. Well, it doesn't really fit with the iPhone accessory that I purchased from them. So I've also got female jewelry here. Now maybe they're trying to push me in the category, but I've never browsed female jewelry. I never bought it from them. So they completely missed the boat, turned me off. The one to the right there, I never purchased, but look at that. Female products. I've got a watch, I've got high heels and a men's sweatshirt, right? Nothing really hits here. Next time I get this subject line that says, Greg, recommended just for you, I'm not opening. I know you missed the boat here. So be careful with those subject lines. Make sure if they're just for you, they are indeed just for you. Irrelevant results, right? So here's a couple examples. I'm shopping for something specific. You recommend some things in line with what I'm looking for. But then, it's a $20 pair of headphones and then I've got a $1,000 television, right? You really missed the boat on that one. I'm not shopping for a $1,000 television. I'm shopping for a $20 pair of headphones. Same with the JCPenney example, right? Those two products in the middle with the toy phones don't really fit with the train set I'm looking to buy. So make sure those results are relevant. You can always try to push people into other categories, but make sure it's done in a proper manner. Generic recommendations are okay, right? Static ones, maybe it's the same 4, maybe they are hard-coded, maybe they are top seller or something like that. It's okay to do those, but it's all about expectations. Recommended for you, right? I got a pea coat, which is not my style. I never wear it. Shoes, I don't know, maybe I'd wear those at some point. Earphones, because of course I need earbuds when I'm wearing that stuff. All right, they're not recommended for me. They're not relevant. They're not based on anything I purchased or browsed. And then I've got below that skinny jeans, right? I'll be dead before I wear a pair of skinny jeans. And to the right there, I've got female products, winter products, summer products, right? These are just things thrown at a wall to see if I'm interested. Now, how do you do that right? Expectations, right? Some of our favorites, customer favorites, top sellers, most viewed, recently viewed, staff picks, whatever it can be. As long as you don't promise it's just for them, that's what matters most, right? It's really about just setting expectations with them. People will forgive you if you don't have the best product recommendations, as long as you set the expectations properly, right? Recommended products. Well, they recommended for me, or do we just recommend them? We just recommend them. We like these things. And that's how you do them right. So when you look at recommendations, they are powerful. They can make any message more relevant. They can make all messages more relevant. And you don't need, now ideally you want intuitive ones, but you don't always need specific intuitive ones as long as you set the expectations properly. So the things we talked about, the 4 strategies, recommendations, browse recovery, cart abandonment, welcome series, these are all things that don't require a huge team to execute. They're all things that a small, lean team can't execute, but the beauty here is you don't need to go from 0 to 100. you can implement one thing slowly at a time and build and build and build. And that's how you get ahead with these things. So I touched on a very brief portion of the retailer data. So if you go to bronto.com/inside the mines, you can download any of the 4 country specific ones or all of them and look at some of the retail report here. But again, be a concierge to your customers. Listen to them, take the data, and provide some sort of relevant result out to them based on what they're doing. And that could be messaging, recommendations, whatever it might be, but be a concierge. So at this point, I'm going to turn it back over to Grant. I think we have some time for some questions, and thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks very much, Greg. Another fantastic presentation. Great to see so much Australian data too. So we really appreciate that from you guys, and looking forward to seeing you in those skinny jeans by the next webinar. So
yeah, that's not happening.
So look, a couple of questions off the bat. So someone says, you mentioned intuitive product recommendations a couple of times. We are sending more generic recommendations like top products or best sellers. Is this a bad strategy?
Yeah, so that piggybacks a little bit on what I just talked about. Not necessarily a bad strategy, can be extremely effective. Just set the expectations properly, right? So if you're using best sellers, call them best sellers. Don't call them just for you. If you do that, people are going to recognize it. They're going to, if they're not relevant to them one time, they're still going to look at that section next time they open the email because they know you didn't promise it was just for them. So no, not a bad strategy by any means. Just setting those expectations matters.
Okay, and another one here. So with respect to browser abandonment, my concern is that we will aggravate our customers. I know this is something that comes up a lot with retailers as well. They may think we're following them too closely. Is this a legitimate concern, and what do we do about that?
Legitimate concern, yes. Yeah, it's always a worry about aggravating your customers. So I can tell you from consulting Australian, UK, and US clients, they're effective tools. You just need to know your audience a little bit better. But as I said before, you're going to send them a message anyways, right? The next scheduled message you send is going to go to them, right? So why not send something more relevant? Now, if you're really concerned about them feeling like they're being stalked, for lack of a better term, avoid terminology and subject lines that say, hey, we saw you checking this out, and make it look more like a batch and blast message. Where they don't really feel like they're being stalked. They just feel like they were sent a message that happened to be very timely to them. And that's one of those easy ways to get around that type of the fear for them. But I think you're going to get very little blowback, if any, by doing something like that. But again, if you're more cautious and you're more concerned with it, make it more of a generic message, but still relevant at the same time. So yes, there is a concern, but I think you can easily walk around it.
And another thing earlier, I suppose, was around, someone said, so around the splitting of the messages depending on who the customer type is, the welcome messages, and how hard is this to implement using the Bronto platform or other?
Yeah, it's really easy. So there's a couple different ways. I talked about both acquisition source and then click-based type stuff or activity type things. And from the acquisition source, the source is probably just a little more work. It really depends on how your website's structured, but there's multiple ways to execute on that, but fairly easy. And then from a click-based standpoint or activity-based standpoint, extremely easy, right? Because that data is already living inside of Bronto. So if they click on XYZ segment, simple drag and drop automation, and boom, you're off and running. You can always tweak those things or add to them as you go forward. So it's pretty easy on both fronts, but if you have very specific questions or offline want to point me to your website, I can take a look at it or whatever, just feel free to contact me and be happy to have that conversation with you.
Okay, and look, I think we've got time for one last one here. So if you're creating a click-based welcome series, and it goes along from the previous question, and they click on multiple links in the first message, how do you handle which message someone will get as the follow-up?
Yeah, really good question, and very nice tie-in, which is great. But really good question. You're thinking through things. So yeah, the easiest way to really do it is think about a hierarchy. What's your most important category, your most important link? So let's just say you have 6 navigation bar links, and those are your overarching categories. And figure out which one's most important for you. Hey, 60% of our sales come from link A. That's our low hanging fruit. We can convert people on that. So let's make that the priority. Now, maybe you have that's category 6 is, fewer people click on it, but it's a very high margin type product. Maybe you want to funnel people that way, because if you can get that customer, you're then banking for the long term for it. So really just having some sort of hierarchy to say, hey, this link is more important for us as a company and consumer base. And then just, hey, if they clicked on 3 of these links in there, which one's the higher priority? Let's send them that message. But think about how you can do click 2 and click 3, whatever they're clicking on. If you send a message A on link A, your secondary or tertiary call to actions can be more in line with the other clicks on there. So less important, but we can still tout areas inside that email to point people there as well. So you kind of make an all-encompassing email just focusing on one of them. So hopefully that explanation makes sense, but if you need more clarification, just follow up with me. But really good question. So thank you for that.
Excellent. Well, look, that's all the questions we've got there, Greg, and we really appreciate your time. So just for everyone listening in or tuning in, that this webinar will be made available as a video on Power Retail, which we'll send around to everyone. But again, Greg, it's always great to have you speaking on behalf of Oracle and Bronto. You always impart great information. I certainly enjoy this. I think everyone else did too. They're sticking around, which is great for one of these events. So really appreciate your time today. Thanks everyone for tuning in. And if you do have any follow-up questions, certainly email us at info@mediapad.com.au, and we'll make sure that gets across to the guys at Bronto and Oracle. So thank you very much, guys.